So recently I went on a trip, which I know is not really a big surprise. It's summertime, lots of people are going away on things, but what was surprising for me on that trip is I got to do something I rarely get to do, and that was go see a movie. I don't really go see movies. It takes something to really get me out to theaters. But this one was special. It was Spider-Man Homecoming, and growing up, Spider-Man was my favorite superhero, and he still is my favorite superhero. From the video games, to the cartoons, to the comics, I would go to bed and make wishes that I could wake up with Spider-Man's powers so I could help save the world as a young kid. And I would sometimes wake up with sweaty hands and trying to stick to the wall, and for a minute I thought it was sticking, but then I would realize in great disappointment that no, I don't have Spider-Man's powers. I know, big surprise. However, we also got the announcement that Insomniac is working on a new Spider-Man game, and it's been a long time since we had a truly fantastic Spider-Man game, so I'm hoping this is going to turn out well. But it did send me down the road of nostalgia. What video games of Spider-Mans did I end up playing as I grew up? And I wanted to list out which ones were my favorites. So here are my top 5 Spider-Man games of all time. Spider-Man has been in a huge amount of video games in endless genres. From open world romps, to fighting games, to action RPGs, our web swinger has seen and done a lot in the gaming world. Spidey and his cast of characters makes for some excellent video game fodder and fantastic fun if done right.
Come out and play! Tag!
So when going through all the games he's been in, I needed to figure out how to narrow down the list of games to include, so for the purposes of this list, we'll be ignoring games he's been in as part of an ensemble like Marvel vs. Capcom or Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and focusing on the games where he's the sole star. Now, let's take a look at some of the best games from our favorite sticky white goo shooting superhero. Why am I allowed to write these scripts? Before Spider-Man became known for all his open-world adventures and games later on, our man Peter Parker was relegated to platformers and beat-em-ups of varying degrees of quality. However, the one I remember playing the most as a child growing up has to be Maximum Carnage. First off, it has Carnage in it, so it's a big win already. Second, you get to play as either Spider-Man or Venom. Anything with Venom in it is already given a big old plus by me. Oh god, accept that. No, definitely not that. What did they do to Spider-Man after 2 good movies? But more specifically, Maximum Carnage did a whole lot right. It was a gorgeous looking game that nailed the art style of the comic books with bright, vibrant colors that kept it nice and easy to look at. The combat itself was great fun and solid to play through, while also telling a loosely interpreted version of the story arc by the same name. Had it been multiplayer, it might have even beat the next game up on my list. While looking at this game now, it's really easy to scratch your head and think to yourself, really? But you have to understand that back in 2000, this was a gorgeous game. And most importantly for young Mathas, this was probably the first game that made me feel like I was playing Spider-Man. While not an open-world Spider-Man game itself, it did have web swinging, 3D wall crawling, and some decent Spider-Man-esque combat with all his aerial and acrobatic maneuvers. Its story was also reminiscent of an extended episode of the awesome 90s Spider-Man cartoon. God, I loved that show. Seriously, if you've never seen the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, you need to go watch it. Also, the 90s Batman cartoon is equally amazing, if not a little better, but that's beside the point. And like most PS1 games, sure, it hasn't aged all that well, but it was one of the first Spider-Man games that really struck me and stuck with me all through my gaming life. And for that, it gets a prized place on my list. This next one on the list was a pretty divisive game when it came out, and did not review all that well. And sure, it was far from perfect and had a good but crazy storyline, and featured a bizarre quiz boss fight with none other than Wolverine himself, because he couldn't tell if you were the real Spider-Man or not, so clearly the best way to figure that out is to fight you but then quiz you, and if you answer right enough times, I guess Logan will believe you, because he's that stupid. Look, it doesn't make any sense. But besides that, I remember loving my time with SpiderMan Web of Shadows. The web swinging through the open world was pretty dang good, and the combat had a good amount of variety, allowing you to play as both classic Spider-Man as well as the black suit Spidey, each with their own moveset and unlockables, while also introducing a choice mechanic sequence that essentially devolved into hero choices or villain choices that would change how the story played out. And while it wasn't really received all that well, I loved playing this game and played it twice through to see both different endings. It also didn't look half bad and was fast and kinetic. Also, you can bang Black Cat. Not that that's why this game's on the list. In the early 2000s, Marvel was revamping quite a few heroes to help make them more appealing to a newer and younger audience. And one such character was, of course, the company's flagship character, Spider-Man. He would get a brand new comic series called Ultimate Spider-Man, making Peter Parker much younger and putting him in high school while giving him relationships with characters that would put a strain on his Spider-Man persona, and an art style that was unique all on its own. Eventually, we would get a game in that universe, and it was pretty fantastic. It adapted the comics art style in a way that helps it look pretty damn good even by today's standards, using the cell shading method. You also got to play as Venom and leap around the city like the hulking monstrosity that he is, and it made traversal different, but equally as fun as web swinging. The story was told in a very comic book fashion with moving comic book panels that were flashy and exciting with all the onomatopoeias you could ask for. Couple that with some great voice acting and a really fun story, and you had a bona fide Spidey hit on your hands. The only things I remember hating were the races against the Human Torch. I get it, man, you're faster than me, go save the world or something. Other than that, the open world was gorgeous, the side quests were fun, combat was pretty dang good, and again, Venom is in it, and it was a pretty Venom-centric storyline. You also got to fight Wolverine in a bar as Venom, and honestly, how much more metal can you get? Is that what metal is? Because I don't listen to metal music, really. Is that metal? Does that count as metal? Even today, this game is great, and if you can get your hands on it, you should absolutely play some Ultimate Spider-Man. It is super fun. Alright, you knew this game was gonna be on the list. I mean, it has to be on the list. There is no other Spider-Man game out there that has ever made me feel like Spider-Man the way SpiderMan II has in the past. Visually, the game maybe hasn't aged all that well, and the side quests can definitely get repetitive. I am so sick of getting that kid's balloon.
Oh no, my balloon! My balloon!
But besides that, SpiderMan II, a movie-based game no less, nailed near everything else, especially the web swinging. A momentum-based traversal system dependent on the architecture around you with quick reflexes necessary made movement in and of itself its own game. And you could get good at it, to the point where moving around the city was a way I spent countless hours while doing nothing else. With practice, you can make web swinging around New York something to marvel at while you played. SpiderMan II is the Spidey game every other Spider-Man game took inspirations from and aspired to be, with varying degrees of success. You mix that web swinging with some really good Spider-Man combat that truly captured the way Spider-Man moves when fighting bad guys, and you had yourself a winner. And ever since then, I've hoped something would come along and pull me in like Spidey 2 did. Let's hope the new Spider-Man game coming out nails the feel that Spider-Man 2 did over a decade ago. My fingers are crossed, but my spider senses aren't tingling. Is that a good pun? And that is just a very small sample of the Spider-Man games out there, not even including the ones where he's part of a mixed superhero cast. Those are just the ones where he's the sole star, and there's still a ton of other good Spider-Man games out there. Though I think you might be hard-pressed to find another list out there that does not include Ultimate Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. I honestly think those are the pinnacle, the cream of the crop of Spider-Man games. Those were the ones that I spent my most time on, and nothing has really ever made me feel as cool as Spider-Man 2 did way back in, what was it, 2004, I think, when that game came out? Still, if you're in for some Spider-Man games, you can find a ton out there, and they're a lot of fun. Here's to hoping Insomniac really pulls off the next one. So my question to you is pretty simple. What is your favorite superhero video game? Doesn't have to be Spider-Man, I'm just curious what your favorite superhero video game is. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of Arkham in there, and rightfully so, Arkham was, all the Arkham games were amazing. If we see Superman 64, I'll ban you, and that'll be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll be back in a couple weeks with a brand new review here on the Judge Mathas channel. I appreciate your support. I especially appreciate the Patreon supporters over on patreon.com/Judge Mathas. If you are part of the $5 and up tier, the script for this episode should be live. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.